Now, sleep paralysis has a scientific explanation. Basically, it's a harmless bodily glitch. While trapped in it, we will experience terrifying hallucinations and end up mistaking it for something paranormal. But is it really just that? In today's video, I'm going to share 3 true stories from Chinese netizens who've experienced sleep paralysis. And their encounters go way beyond just hallucinations. Some of these stories might actually make you question whether the science has it all figured out. Fair warning, this episode contains quite a few creepy images, but I always give you a 5-second heads up before something disturbing appears. So when you see this little ghost pop up on screen, that's your cue to close your eyes. This happened in April 2008 during my college years. By then, summer had already started creeping into Beijing. The air was hot and dry. It made sleeping at night almost unbearable. So, after talking it over with my roommate Tao Tao, we decided to move out of the dorms and find a place of our own. We ended up renting a small apartment on Huaibaishu Street. It's an old neighborhood, lively and full of daily life. With people always around, it feels pretty safe. The house was on the 3rd floor, tucked away in the southeast corner of a little courtyard complex. The location was super remote. To get there from the main road, you have to go through a whole maze of turns, then squeeze down a narrow alley where even a car couldn't fit. Since Tao Tao handled all the rental stuff, the day we moved in was actually my first time coming here. To be honest, the moment I walked into the courtyard, I didn't feel anything too strange. Just thought the building looked kind of old. Even though the outside walls had been repainted a bright yellow, there was still a strong musty smell in the air, whispering stories of how long this place had been around. However, the moment I stepped into that shady stairwell, I felt something was off. A sudden chill crept down my spine, and right as I walked in, a whole swarm of tiny bugs suddenly flew straight at my face. Right then, I had a bad feeling. But Tao Tao didn't notice a thing. She was still super excited, so I didn't see anything. When we got to our front door, that uneasy feeling peaked. And that's when I realized we were the only ones living on the entire floor. There was just one neighbor, an old lady, but she was rarely home. That struck me as weird. This was Beijing, where every square inch of space was worth gold. How could so many units just sit empty? But luckily, the apartment itself wasn't bad. Sunlight poured in from the windows, instantly chasing away the lingering unease. Over the next few days, we cleaned and decorated non-stop. Soon, this little house had turned into a cozy, purple-themed home. Everything seemed to settle down. But slowly, I started noticing something wasn't right. I only had morning classes that semester, so I usually came home around noon to take naps. But every time I napped, every single time, I got hit with sleep paralysis. I'd be trapped in that half-awake state, eyes too heavy to open, and the whole room would feel hazy and distorted. Worse, I could feel people all around me, walking, talking, yelling. Sometimes, I could even sense them standing in a circle, watching me sleep. But strangely, this only happened during naps. Nighttime was totally normal. Eventually, I told Tao Tao about it, but she said she hadn't felt anything weird at all. That made me relax a bit. Maybe I just wasn't used to the new place. Still, after that, I totally avoided taking naps. I didn't want to risk it anymore, but I was wrong to think that would be enough. Every night before bed, Tao Tao would always lock our bedroom door and double-check the latch. The lock was old-fashioned and mechanical, super sturdy. That gave us a decent sense of security. But despite all that, every single morning, we'd wake up and find the door slightly open. Just a thin crack, not wide, not small, just enough for someone to be standing outside, peeking in. At first, I thought maybe Tao Tao had gotten up to use the bathroom, so I ignored it. But one afternoon, while we were eating lunch, she casually said, "Oh, by the way, if you ever get up at night to use the bathroom, remember to bolt the door again when you come back." What do you mean? I never get up at night. Wait, you didn't open the door? Wasn't it you? That's when it finally hit us. This wasn't just some harmless quirk, this was serious. At that moment, we both completely lost our appetite, grabbed our things, and rushed back to campus. That night, before coming back home, we bought a pitchwood sword, hoping it could ward off evil. This time, we decided to sleep in the same bed. Before turning in, we double-checked the bolt, made sure everything was locked tight, and hung the pitchwood sword right on the doorknob. I don't know if it was the sword that helped, but that night, for once, the door stayed closed. A few days later, Tao Tao's boyfriend came over for a visit. When I heard the news, I was actually kind of happy. Finally, some extra company to liven things up. Her boyfriend's name was Chuang, a tall, muscular guy who gave off some safety vibes. After dinner and a few drinks, we all sat down in the living room to chat. Eventually, the conversation drifted toward all the creepy stuff that had been going on. Chuang said, "If there is something like ghosts in the house, just cuss it out. Seriously, the nastier, the better. Ghosts hate that kind of dirty stuff, right?" With more people around, and thinking about how I've been living scared out of my mind, I finally let loose. I started swearing like crazy, yelling at the thing that had been tormenting me. But right after I cursed something toward his ancestor, there was a loud crash. I screamed instinctively. We all turned to look and saw a glass bottle of vinegar lying shattered on the floor. But I remember it had been sitting right in the center of the table a moment ago. There hadn't been any wind, no one was near the table, and the bottle had been sitting firmly in the middle. But the moment I cursed it, it smashed. The whole room fell silent. Even Chuang, who just been joking around, went pale. I completely broke down. So that night, I told Tao Tao, "Please, let's just move out. I don't care if we have to go back to the sweaty dorms. Anything's better than this haunted hellhole." But Tao Tao, who was usually more timid than me, suddenly snapped, "If you want to go, go. I'm not afraid. I'm staying. If you're breaking the lease, that's on you." But how could I truly leave her here alone? Seeing how determined she was, I couldn't bring it up again. I figured we'd just tough it out until the lease ended. After that, we started sleeping in the same bed. But even so, every tiny noise made my heart jump. I was seriously on the verge of a mental breakdown. And Tao Tao, she wasn't doing much better. Even though she didn't want to move out, she was clearly scared of being alone. She followed me everywhere, even to the bathroom. In the end, we started showering together just to feel safer, but even that didn't stop the creepy stuff. One night, we were in the shower. I had my eyes closed, washing my face, when I suddenly felt a cold hand wrapped around my waist. I laughed and reached out, thinking it was Tao Tao being playful, and gave her a hug back. But she jumped and said, "Why are you hugging me?" "Huh? Didn't you just hug me?" "Just finished showering. I need to tell you something." "Tell me now." "Let's wait until we're out." Later, back in the bedroom, Tao Tao carefully bolted the door, then turned to me and said, "I never touched you. I was washing my face the whole time." She looked really freaked out, glancing around like something might still be watching us. And in that moment, I knew for sure something else was living with us in that apartment. The next day, I called my uncle. He knew a Taoist priest who was said to be really skilled with this kind of stuff. At the same time, I tried once again to convince Tao Tao to live with me, but she still refused. And honestly, she started acting really strange, quiet, withdrawn, like she was a totally different person. Eventually, I reached out to her boyfriend. He said if I were that scared, I should go back to the dorms and he come stay with Cao Cao to keep an eye on her. So I packed my things and left. As soon as I stepped into the dorm, I was hit with a wave of hate, but weirdly, I felt relieved. Still, I couldn't stop worrying about Cao Cao, so I gave her a call. But when she answered, her voice was cold, flat, emotionless. She just said she wasn't scared at all and even joked that she might move into my bed. Honestly, that creepy, spaced-out version of her freaked me out even more. About a week later, my uncle called, sounding panicked. "Get your friend out of that apartment, now!" Turns out, he had finally spoken to the tourist priest, but before he could even finish explaining what had happened, the priest interrupted. "Is it that third-floor unit on the southeast corner of Huaibaishu Street?" Apparently, the priest had visited that exact apartment years ago. He remembered it clearly because it was seriously cursed. Back in 2003, 4 girls had been renting that place. They all worked at a nearby karaoke bar. One night, someone broke in and attacked them. 3 of the girls died on the spot, and the 4th was badly hurt but survived. Soon, the case made headlines and everyone in the neighborhood knew about it. And not long after, most of the residents on that floor, and even in the entire building, had moved out. Suddenly, everything made sense. The empty units, the creepy stares from the elderly neighbors, the old lady next door who never stayed home, the sleep paralysis, the shadowy figures walking around during my naps. No wonder. With no hesitation, I called Cao Cao's mom and explained everything. The next day, she showed up and forced her to leave. Of course, Cao Cao fought back like crazy, refusing to go. Later, when we talked about it, she told me, "I don't know what came over me. I just wasn't scared anymore. When you said you were leaving, I was actually mad at you. I thought, fine, go ahead, I'm staying." Now that I think about it, it was like I was under a spell. And that's pretty much how the story ends. If you count from move-in to the day we finally ran out in a panic, it was barely a month. One last thing worth mentioning, that apartment, somehow, it ended up being rented out again to one of our classmates. But it wasn't as lucky. He was this big, strong guy, dark-skinned, athletic, but after just a few months in that place, he got really sick, hospitalized, needed surgery. And after he moved out, he kept telling us, "That place is seriously cursed, like next level cursed." Starting around March 2021, I began having sleep paralysis constantly. It didn't matter if it was during a nap or at night. As long as I fell asleep, I get pinned down. And every time, I'd feel something tinkling my armpits. It was weirdly itchy, but I never dared to open my eyes. I was terrified I'd see something horrible. This phenomena lasted for quite a long time that I didn't even want to sleep anymore. Every time I was about to drift off, my brain would just jolt awake. After a while, my mental state completely collapsed. One day, a coworker noticed how pale I looked and asked if I was okay. I took the chance to tell her everything that had been happening. Coincidentally, she told me her friend's mom was a Buddhist and had helped people deal with this kind of thing before. Then she gave me her contact info and told me to go see her. A few days later, I visited the lady's house and met her. After listening carefully, she handed me a small statue of Guan Yin and told me to place it in my room. She said to keep it covered with a red cloth during the day and uncover it at night. She also recited some Buddhist scriptures for me and explained, "My life path is kind of unique. I have a spiritual connection with the Buddha and might be better suited to a monastic life. But because of that spiritual sensitivity, I was more likely to attract paranormal things. I followed her instructions carefully, and for a few days, the sleep paralysis actually stopped. But that relief didn't last. Soon, it came back, worse than before. It felt like something was sitting on my chest, pressing so hard I could barely breathe. I even felt hands wrapping around my neck, choking me. I gathered all my strength and grabbed one of the hands, and I could feel it struggling in my grip. It was a woman's hand, small and bony. She kept scratching at me while I held on. At that point, I went back to the Buddhist lady for help. She said this wasn't just some wandering spirit. I'd probably run into something really vicious. She told me to go to Luohan Mountain and find her master. Her master wasn't Buddhist, but apparently he was something like a spiritual medium, a half-deity, and he was well known in the area for handling this kind of stuff. He must can help me out. Then, with no other choice, I made my way up to the mountain. The man wasn't quite what I expected. When I told him I was getting sleep paralysis and suspected it was a ghost, he didn't believe me. Instead, he asked, "How do you know it's a ghost and not just exhaustion?" I told him everything the Buddhist lady had said, and that seemed to convince him. He stopped asking questions and just started doing calculations. Then he told me to come back the next day before noon. He prepared a protective talisman for me. The next day, I got the talisman and started wearing it every day. And honestly, things really did start to get better. To show my gratitude, I invited my coworker's friend out for a thank you dinner. And that's when I learned a horrifying detail that neither the lady nor the master had told me. Turned out, after I left, the old man immediately called the Buddhist lady. "There's a girl being followed by not just one, but multiple ghosts. I can't handle this alone. You need to help me." During their ritual, they managed to communicate with one of the spirits, the woman who had been haunting me. She said she had first seen me back in March. That night, I had been drinking and walking home alone, slightly out of it, so she took that chance and latched on. But the reason she chose me wasn't random. In her words, in a past life, she had been my husband's mistress. She got pregnant back then, but later had a miscarriage, and she believed it was my fault. So now, she was back for revenge. She also told the master the second ghost on my body had no grudge. He just randomly latched onto me during another lonely night when I was walking around feeling down. But the third ghost was the most shocking of all. He was my husband from a previous life. Back then, we had promised to be together again in our next lives, but he died first. Instead of reincarnating, he waited for me. But when I died, I went straight to be reborn and didn't come looking for him. So now, he's been searching for me ever since. Not to hurt me, but to ask me why I broke our promise. And when he saw that the mistress from our past life was haunting me, he stuck around to protect me. After that, my friend told me, if it happens again, next time you get sleep paralysis, ask their names. Once we know their names, my mom and the master can help guide them away. I said, sure, no problem. But it's easier said than done. When I fell to sleep and the sleep paralysis came back again, I was so terrified, I kept forgetting to ask. After several more times, I forced myself to speak. Luckily, the second ghost told me his name was Yuan Jing, and the mistress was Lin Zhiyi. Okay, Yuan Jing, Lin Zhiyi, Yuan Jing, Lin Zhiyi, Yuan Jing, Lin Zhiyi. I repeated their names over and over in my head until I woke up. The moment I did, I texted my friends so I wouldn't forget. A couple of weeks later, she told me they had already helped Yuan Jing move on. About a month after that, the old master managed to guide the man, my past life husband, away too. Now, only Lin Zhiyi remained, but at this point, he couldn't hurt me anymore. The master said, as long as I stopped thinking about her, stopped feeding her energy, she'd eventually fade away on her own. After that, the sleep paralysis episodes became less and less frequent. and eventually they stopped entirely. Excuse me, sir? What kind of nerve do you have showing up to find your past life wife? You cheated on her. She hasn't even come after you yet. If I were the OP, I'd have blasted you into ashes on the spot. Anyway, back to the serious stuff. Personally, I think sleep paralysis can come in two types, the physical kind and the spiritual kind. Why do I say that? Because I've experienced both. The physical kind usually happens when I take a really long naps, like those deep afternoon slumps. My body just feels heavy and numb, and sometimes I hear weird, chaotic sounds, but I don't see any hallucinations. Whenever that happens, I just give up resisting, let myself drift back into sleep, and eventually I wake up fine. But I've also had the paranormal one. Only once, my very first time. It was during winter break in my sophomore year of college, around 2015. It was right before Chinese New Year. As usual, we started visiting families and friends, exchanging gifts and all that. That day, I woke up to find I was home alone. Okay, my parents must have gone out socializing. So I grabbed a quick brunch and started playing video games. Back then, I was obsessed with Sniper Elite. Some of you might know it. It's a first-person shooter game, super intense and fast-paced. I'd always be laser-focused while playing it. But that day, for some reason, I started getting sleepy, like tsunami-level drowsy. I couldn't even fight it off. I literally dropped onto my bed and knocked out. But I was lying sideways across the bed, like this. So my feet were facing toward the door. Soon, I slipped into a dream. In the dream, I was back at my grandparents' old house, the little clay brick house I'd known since childhood. The sun was shining outside, and I stood in the doorway, looking in. My grandparents were sitting across from each other at the table, smiling at me, just like they always did when I came over. But the room was dark. I couldn't see their face clearly. To the left of the door was a big marble table, like always. But this time, it had a shrine set up on it, with fresh fruits piled up high. There was even a bunch of grapes so fresh, still had water droplets on them. The grapes were so dark purple, they were almost black. I don't know why, I just couldn't resist. I grabbed one and popped it into my mouth. And right at that moment, I woke up. But my body was completely frozen. I couldn't even open my eyes. It felt like I was nailed to the bed. I started cursing and mumbling all the Buddhist mantras I could think of, but nothing worked. So finally, I stopped struggling, slipped back into the same dream, same place, same scene. I was standing in the doorway again, but this time, I saw my mom in front of the shrine. She was tidying things up. I even said to her, "Mom, you really love Grandpa, huh? Look at all the imported fruits and snacks you bought for him." And then, I slowly woke up. The house was still quiet. My parents weren't home yet. But for some reason, I started to feel uneasy. So I called my dad and asked where they were. But to my surprise, he said, "Oh, it's near the New Year, so me and your mom just went to pay respects at your grandparents' graves. We just finished cleaning up and we were heading home now." Why? What's up? I was speechless. Suddenly, everything that appeared in my dream made sense. It was like I had tapped into a live feed of what they were doing. Later, I told my dad about the dream over the phone. He just laughed and said, "Oh, maybe they missed you. You couldn't be there, so they came to visit you instead. Don't be scared." As for that grape I ate in the dream, I still don't know why I did it. And that's it for today's video. I hope these stories helped you pass a peaceful night. If you have ever had a creepy or just plain weird experience with sleep paralysis, feel free to drop it in the comments. I love to read your stories. Alright friends, sleep tight and good night.